Time to attach the facings. It's a really easy technique. If you have a label, please put it a little bit higher. I put it all the way at the end there. I don't know why I did that. It's very silly. It needs to be like right on the height of the back, doesn't it? So that you can see it from the front. Never mind. You want to pin with this really handy tool I've got here. It's actually really good. Get yourself one of those pin picker uppers. They're magnetic. You can get them at Joann's. They're not expensive and they are really helpful. So I'm going to just pin this together here with the right sides facing, the pins and the back of the Dungies I'm doing here. And let me just pin that in. And one thing that I want to point out is that the facings are slightly slimmer than the outer part, and that's so it pulls it in and it doesn't stick out and it's unsightly. But to be fair, you will hardly notice it. If this was an evening dress, it would have been more important. But I thought I'd show you that little trick. So on a lot of garments, you get that the facings are actually, in some cases, massively different. So they pull in and nothing of the lining shows. Now we can sew all the way around from underarm seam to underarm seam, and I repeat this process now on the front. So I take my front facing and I put it down. Brilliant. Line it all up. Put pins just in the really important parts. You do not need to put pins absolutely everywhere. Just 1, 2, 3, 4 and one for the center front, and that will do. See, and we're just going to sew around here, same as on the back. Over to the sewing machine. And the important thing here is to not pull or stretch anything. You're literally pushing the fabric in. Otherwise you have stretched underarms, you've got stretched back, stretched front, and it's not very sightly. I don't want you to mess about here with like putting stay stitching in and all that, because you really don't need it. You just need to get into the habit to push your fabric in, and the stitch you are doing is effectively then your stay stitch. I've seen more people go wrong with stay stitching than do it right, you know, like stretching it by actually putting the stay stitch in. So I wouldn't do that. Yeah, just push it in. Get into the habit of never ever pulling it. Pushing it in is the right thing to do. And you work your way around very slowly. Don't hurry yourself. Do the same on the front, of course, as you can see here. And now we're going to cut back our seam allowances. And I'm doing that pretty sharpish, as you can see, but don't be like overzealous. We don't want no fraying either. We don't want anything to come out, even though jersey doesn't really fray, but you still don't want fibers to poke out, do you? So 3 millimeters is probably a good amount, and you shouldn't come any closer than that. And I also snip into the curve. It's not really necessary, I think, but you know. It's habit. You could test it. You could just see if you need to do it, and if there's any tension, go back in and snip it, for example. I do the same on the back, cut it back and snip it. And there we go. That's our facings done. I can now turn them and work out all my curves, and then I'm going to press it. And even for someone that does the curves really well, and you could see me doing it, looks all perfect, right? And even when I do it, my rounds, just because of the seam allowance and the fabric might be a little bit bulky, not all of it is always as nice and smooth and round as I want it to be. And what you do is you help yourself with that pin that you can see me here use. So on the one hand, I work out my little curve, but also if I have a little kink in it, what I do is I push it back in. So before you top stitch and before you iron it, you make sure that it looks perfectly round, because once you pressed it, you can't do that anymore, easily at least. So here you can see it, I've got a kink, and I just push it back in. And there's another one on the side here, and I just move that, and perfect. Now when I press it, it'll press in this shape, and if you then wanted to at the end, you can top stitch all of this, and then it'll never ever go anywhere. So go all the way around. Dead easy. Do it to the front, and then I also have to iron my back. It's pretty, oh, very nice. There we go. One thing you can do as well is you could do the facing slightly bigger than your Dungies, and then when you press it, the yellow would peep out and it's like full piping. That is something you could also try one day. I haven't tried it here on these, but it's a really good trick.